Hi, I'm Vida Clocky with Vida's Collectibles. I'd like to demonstrate for you today how to paint a barn ornament with realistic colors. If you watch my previous video on the church scenes, you can review that to look over my supplies and the colors I was using. And here are some samples of the church and barn scene ornaments that I have designed and painted. And what we're going to do today is more of the reddish realistic scenes on the barns. First of all, we'll start with a sketch, and to begin with, of course this is the round ball, so we have to do that horizon line a little differently. I mark about where I want my horizon line with a Stabilo pencil, and I use one of these markers, and I try to find that mark I just made. This is a pencil holder, actually, that gives you nice straight lines. And I try to mark about where that line might meet, and that's pretty close. So if I firmly hold that ball down, I can move the ball around, and hopefully, I did go down a little bit here because of the slope in the end. Okay, but I'm going to look at this, and that looks pretty good from that angle. So that's what I'm going to start with for my horizon line. Now you can freehand sketch these as I do with the Stabilo pencil, or use a pattern, reduce or enlarge your pattern however you'd like it to fit, tape it on and trace it. I prefer to hand sketch. It's easier for me. So I'll start with, first of all, the barn. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you have to get a general idea. This little barn, I love this style of barn where it comes down on each side and has little lean-to or additions onto that. Let's put a little windmill in. I usually start with a straight line and then just add a V to it. At the tip, I'll just do a circle there so I know where I'm coming back to. And of course, I need some trees in the background. On these ornaments, I don't go all the way around. You could go around and continue on with the design on this side, but I usually save the back side of the ornament for lettering, personalization, and in this case, I do a lot of North Dakota items, so I put the North Dakota decal on the back. Okay, and after I continue with the trees, I'm going to come on down with a little path again, like I did in my other video. I'm going to bounce this now. I need something down here. I could do fence post as I did in that design, or how about some wagon wheels? I just do a little C's, another little C. And that would be my snow that's coming in front. And maybe just a simple little grouping of grasses here that might be sticking through the snow. So I feel like I have kind of an S design, a little bit of interest going on here. I like to put these on a little stand so I feel like I have more of a grip when I'm working on them, because anything round is a little more difficult to work on. Now my palette is the same palette as I used in my church scene video, my previous video, if you'd like to view that to check the names of the colors. And my supplies are the same for this scene ornament. So let's go ahead and begin with the sky. Because this is more of a realistic painting, I'm going to go into my basic blue and maybe make it just a little cooler with a tiny bit of peacock in there, so it's not quite so bright. And like we talked about before, I like to do a wispy sky. It depicts the wind coming through. Oh, that's plenty of color there. A little bit too much. I'm going to tone that down quite a bit. I'll wipe it back here on my paper towel. And no matter how well I cleaned this ornament, it seems like there's always a little bit of that glue from the stamps or the stickers that the manufacturers put on that drive all of us crazy. Alright, so I'm going to pull some more of that wind through there a little bit. Soften as I go. Bring it around here to the edge, a little lighter maybe as we come to the edge. I like that, the stormy look to the sky. Alright, I might call that good. I'll take my silk and clean back a little where my trees are going to be so I don't get too much blue mixed up into my trees that are going to go along this edge. They're like shelter belts. If you're from North Dakota, you know what shelter belts are. They're man-made groves of trees to prevent erosion. I'm going to come in with my Deerfoot Stippler, my yellow brown, and tap in the row of trees that are going to be surrounding the barn. I always drop my darkest color down below and try to walk it up into the light, because the tops of the trees would be lighter than what's below. What's closer to the horizon line will be a little darker. Alright, I'm wiping off my brush often because I'm picking up a little blue here as I go, and so I want to clean that off my brush. That's starting to look like some trees, not too bad. I'm getting into my blue a little bit, so that's again why I'm wiping often. Now I'm going to, maybe because this has got a little more yellow brown, I'll add a little bit more over here. And I'll go into my yellow brown number 2 or pecan. These are like autumn, late autumn foliage down in here. These are whimsical little designs, not meant to be a perfect oil painting. And with my sharp wipeout tool, let's pull out some interesting little branches. You can see my windmills disappeared somewhat, but I have a general idea where that's going to be. Soften a few of those. This little stand really helps to rotate this ornament around. Let's go into the windmill now. I'm going to go in with a scroller brush and my lighter brown. Of the two browns, this is lighter. I start out by bringing that point on down and the next point. Doesn't have to be perfect. Now I'll put the the sidebars in. I'm paying a little bit of attention to the perspective of where this might fall, depending on where the viewer is located here. So bring those back a little bit of an angle. It doesn't have to be perfect. And remember, we talked about that little dot in the center. So how I do this wet on wet is carefully pull in a line to that center, and I try to keep these all basically the same for the blades, and rotate around. If you wanted to, you could do this in a separate fire. It might be easier. I've done so many of these that I kind of have a general idea how it's going to go. All right, with my wipeout tool, let's knock out a little center for pen work for another fire. Let's scratch in a little wood look here. This board got a little wide here, so let's pull that down. We can manipulate if we have to. It's not final till it's fired, so. And I always soften in front a little bit, so there might be some branches or trees that might be coming around to the front. Okay, so we wanted a red barn. I will go in with my smaller square shader, and I'm going to use dull red. Get a nice load on there. Now I want to pay a little bit of attention to the peak of that barn so that these two are at relatively the same angle. Same with this little side part that comes off of that barn. We have a lot of this style barns here in North Dakota. I'm going to gently pull this down. Now these are the direction the boards would probably be going in. Take my wipeout tool, dry, pull some of this color back just a little bit to get kind of a wood pattern going there. Next fire, I would definitely darken up under those eaves. Now I want to take my worn out sharp, this used to be a sharp wipeout tool, and I want to knock out a highlight on the roof as if it were snow. I have to really push hard and try to keep these angles somewhat similar. That can be easier said than done some days. I went a little far with that, so I'm going to make a little correction here on both sides. And this part just so happens to line up with the bar and the windmill. Alright, so I'm looking at this straight on and thinking, well, that looks okay. I think I'll leave that alone. That looks like it could be a line for the snow that could be sitting on the roof. So now I'm coming forward to my middle ground. I'm going to go back, clean this brush from before. Purple on there yet. Okay, I'm going to go into my snow color, which is my pewter. Pull, 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 pull. And I try to start pulling in an interesting area of snowbank. So we porcelain artists, we put the color on so that we could take it off. I think we end up with more color on our wipeout towels than we do on our piece, but that's kind of the way our art is. My windmill, or my little wagon wheels might have disappeared, but that's okay. I don't worry about that too much. I have a general idea where they go to. All right, there's my middle ground. Looks like pretty sloppy snow. Middle size square shader. Let's get into of the grays, it would be the medium gray. Let's knock in a path here. And I usually do these somewhat S shapes, so it leads your eye around. So I'm more or less just blocking that color in, but I'm rounding it somewhat in the shape of the ornament. I have to keep that in mind as I'm wrapping around. The round ornaments are a little more difficult, a little more time consuming to paint. Back to the synthetic wipeout, the angle brush. I want nice, good and clean. I'm putting it in my odorless mineral spirits. Good and dry. Now I want to pay attention here because I want to pull in some strong snowbanks up against the barn area, because that's my focal area. So when I work on this side, I pull the snow towards the road. Now when I get further away, I can block it out a little bit. I want an interesting edge up here. See how I'm creating the looks of drifts? If you're from North Dakota, you know what a snowdrift should look like. Now this side I'm going to pull in because I want this to look like it's piling up around that driveway. And let's clean up this area. Pull, pull. I'm wiping a lot, but I had to put that color down so that I had something to push back to. And of course I worked too far ahead of myself there on that path, so I did get some of it wiped out. Next fire, I'll wash a little bit of brown into this to make it look more like a road. And I like to go in and do little tracks, like maybe there was a car or a sled or something that left during a snowstorm. Just a slight indication. You can barely see that that's there. I might have taken out a little bit too much, but that's the beauty of our art. We can go back and make changes. There we go. Just a slight indication that there's a little path going on there. All right, we talked about the little wagon wheels. So all they basically start out is 2 half circles and then the detail goes in next fire with the pen work. I put the little center hubs in. Knock a little detail highlight into that. Back in with a little pewter in front. Back to the highlight with the wipeout tool. You have to work with the tools and find out what works best for you. Alright, that's the way I would leave that for now, and the detail will go in next time. We talked about putting a little something down here to balance this out. Let's soften this a little bit first, bring it around into nothingness, and decide, okay, I don't want this grouping of grass to be directly across from the sunken wheels there, so maybe I will drop it down a little bit. Back to the Deerfoot Stippler, I would go into yellow-brown, because those are the colors I'm using in this composition. Tiny bit of yellow-brown number 2 for some shadow, and a pointed wipeout, and wispy to make it appear like the wind is blowing. Back to the pewter. Smooth out the bottom of that and highlight that just slightly. Pull that into, soften it into nothingness again. Now at this point, I'm thinking, well, that blue might be just a little bit harsh through here. I should have thought of this before I went that far, but I'm going to soften that just a little bit. I think I like that a little better. Not quite as harsh. Now I take my my flat sponge that's covered with sports wrap and just soften my edge all the way around here. Yeah, this goes so much faster than trying to use a brush to soften all your edges. This got pushed in a little bit, probably from my finger, so alright, this is going to be first fire on my barn scene, my winter barn scene ornament. Thanks for watching the first part of my winter barn scene ornament video. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for part 2. Subscribe to my channel and hit the bell button to get updates on my latest videos. Thanks for watching.